Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, technology, principles, applications. This video is about the magnetic energy community, so I just want to talk for a few minutes about some of the ideas that would hopefully be incorporated into a magnetic energy community. It is my hope, and our hope actually, that in the next few years we will be able to begin prototypes and or modify existing communities to start converting them into magnetic energy communities. And so I think this is kind of what does that look like? Like, what are some of the factors that would be involved in that? Let's start with water. Water is so critical. It's kind of like our lifeblood, if you will. And it's from an infrastructure point of view. How does a magnetic energy system differ than a conventional system? And one of the first things is just the way the water is piped throughout a community. And this would be a relatively small community at first, but from a magnetic energy / resonance point of view, we want even the piping of the water to kind of mimic nature. So you want it to encourage that vortex movement in that water. The way our pipes are done, like in America, especially today, is it really dampens the life force energy, the resonance energy. It kind of deadens water. It really sucks the life rate out of it to have it flow through right angles and through straight lines and pipes that are just not conducive to how water naturally wants to move. So to start with, that would be part of that process, would be making sure that all the pipe is either like in waveform, and that maybe it sounds more expensive, but I'll get to that in a second. And then so we would have magnetic energy wells, like pumps, and then purifiers throughout the community. And that water could be used for everything, obviously, for drinking and for agriculture and whatever, washing, and everything. Now, you're talking about water that is supercharged with magnetic energy, that is programmable, that has an incredible amount of potential to not only transform the community life, but to transform the people, the agriculture, everything in that community. And so water becomes this vital force of energy and power in the community when it's all magnetically charged and magnetically driven. And so that's really huge, and that alone is such a significant factor in a magnetic energy community that would be the foundation. So we'd want to start there, and then moving forward, you can have one of the things that every community should have would be like a magnetic energy greenhouse. And so that greenhouse, powered by that water, would provide all the food necessary for that community, and it can be as large as you want. And let's talk right now, let me get into construction. So when you're talking about the fabrication of materials and incorporating magnetic technology into that fabrication process, and then into the construction process of your buildings, your homes, your community centers, whatever it is, your greenhouses, we really are changing the dynamics of material fabrication and of construction. Obviously, we want all the materials to be completely natural, so free of chemicals and pollution. That's kind of a given. I mean, if you're going to be in this type of community, you've got to expect that things are going to be all natural. But it goes way beyond that, because we want all the materials to be at least semi-conductive of magnetic energy. And so, for example, you could have a greenhouse that we use magnetic fields, and we have pulsing magnetic fields, and we essentially grow the greenhouse, and this happens fast, out of like crystalline structure. So those greenhouses will be very strong, and they could be very large. And when you think in terms of magnetic technology, there's two super critical factors: the materials that you use for construction and the geometry involved in your structures. So we want not only the materials to be conducive to magnetic energy fields, so that we can have every structure in that community brings vitality to life. It supports life. Our current construction, like in America, for example, is terrible when it comes to like life force energy and having like just block walls and rectangular and square shapes and all that is not conducive to the natural flow of like etheric or magnetic energy. This is an etheric magnetic energy model of the universe, if you haven't watched these videos, so just be aware of that. So what we're talking about with magnetic technology though is not only do the materials need to be like in that magnetic energy flow, the geometry of your structure needs to be conducive to like pulsation and waveforms that flow throughout that structure and that magnify, like, so the structure magnifies that energy, concentrates that energy, and keeps it flowing actively. And so one of the most obvious things for that would be like a dome greenhouse and dome housing. And it's relatively easy to grow that shape, and it's relatively easy to construct that shape with magnetic technology. And then other structures that incorporate geometry, like pyramidal structures, sacred geometry type of structures. They could be anything like a type of structures that represent some sort of vortex, like seashell type shapes, spiral shapes. All of those are excellent. They're amazing for magnetic technology and for the flow of that energy. But if we just think in terms of like a simple like geometric, like geodesic dome greenhouse or geodesic dome structures, really from the magnetic energy point of view, the whole structure will actually be spherical. So half of it would be in the ground and half of it would be out of the ground. And that brings another good point. This type of community, when you're having structures that are embedded with magnetic technology and magnetic current is flowing through the structure, all of these structures will be grounded in the magnetic energy sense, not like in the conventional sense where you have like an electrical ground line, but in the magnetic energy sense where the structure itself is actually always somewhat, it's connected and embedded in the ground. Now with magnetic technology, it's very easy to excavate. And this type of community that I'm referring to is a modest development of the magnetic technology on our website. So this isn't going too overboard yet. Now, obviously in different stages and the evolution of these communities, they would get more and more and more advanced. There's no question about that. But just for starters, just incorporating some magnetic technology into the construction process, into the material design, into the geometry of it, into how the water works. Now the water is interesting because with magnetic technology, you can raise water for free off, like literally like in height off of the ground, and then you can use that to power things. Now, part of the whole point of the magnetic energy community would be to transition away from electricity, because those two are fairly incompatible and there's a lot of conflict there. And electricity has a tremendous number of downsides, whereas magnetic energy does not. And so as we transition, before we fully transition to magnetic technology, there will be probably electricity involved, and the magnetic energy units can be used to generate that necessary electricity, if that's necessary for certain things. Now, from the greenhouse perspective, not only do we want the light, the heat, the water, and anything else, and the what's used to filter or to feed the plants and everything, we want all of that magnetically based. Okay, so this is a type of greenhouse that would be able to exist anywhere on the planet and have it be pretty much as large as you would need it for a relatively small community. If it's like 1,000 people or 10,000 people, it doesn't matter, because you could have more than one greenhouse. But you're going to have that everything in that greenhouse is really magnetically focused, so that the food that you grow is tremendously powerful in nutrition and healing properties, sustaining properties, and everything. Now, I'm going to give you this is just a tiny view into the future of what's coming. We will be going through gene modification through not only the changes that are happening on the planet, but through magnetic technology as well. So certain genes will become dormant, certain genes will turn back on. Our physical bodies are actually designed to live off of etheric magnetic energy. if certain genes are activated. And so once that process takes place, what we do with food, like how we view food and nutrition and what's necessary for survival, is going to radically change. And I'm not promoting vegetarianism right now, but as we go through this evolutionary process, we will phase out things like meat and eating animals because we won't need it, and we'll even phase out a large consumption of even plants and vegetables because we're going to have everything our body needs. It will convert from etheric magnetic energy. And so food, we start to eat only food for like certain pleasure and experiences and healing and nutrition, just we it's more of like an intuitive process of eating, and then we will only use what our bodies will consume, what our bodies need. And so it's a very interesting change in dynamic in our relationship to food, but we actually become like almost like superhuman in the sense that we have very strong health, vitality, very powerful immune systems, essentially no disease, no sickness or anything. And so that's that, and all of that, having that food supply that's magnetically based is a part of that community, and it's a part of that transformation in that process. Okay, so now housing, it's the same type of thing where with all the structures we want everything moving toward magnetic technology, sacred geometry, the flow of energy. When it comes to like light and heat and different motors and different technology that's required to like run a household, all of that can start being transitioned to like magnetic units and magnetic technology. And then your power grid, if you will, would be preferably like a microgrid. So you wouldn't, at this stage of the game, until the magnetic technology evolves, like in a few generations, or we move into crystal-based technology, you wouldn't necessarily have a massive power plant. You might have more like microgrids that supply all the houses with magnetic current that doesn't use your typical like copper wire as a conductor. It would use more like a copper-coated steel wire, like coaxial cable type of wire, that would then conduct the magnetic current to like a whole block of houses, for example. So these microgrids are completely impervious to like CMEs, for example, or other technology, or other EMPs, like anything that might hit the community from nature. Now, and then here's part of the reason for using sacred geometry and like using dome housing, for example, is as you go through the generations of development, the magnetic technology can provide force fields around those structures very easily if they are geometrically conducive to magnetic fields and magnetic pulsing, if that makes sense. So like if you have a spherical house and half of that's underneath and half of it's above the ground, all of that whole house can become encompassed with a force field as the magnetic technology kind of moves and progresses in that area, making the whole community essentially invulnerable to natural disasters, to earthquakes or hail or tornadoes or hurricanes. It doesn't really matter. Flooding, none of that would matter because all the structures would ultimately become encased in force fields that protect everyone and everything inside of those structures. So I just want to make that clear that it's like thinking about planning for the future and how the technology will evolve, and what kind of you can start as your foundation for that, if that makes sense. I hope that kind of makes sense. Now, obviously in the magnetic energy community, one of the first things that you want to do is establish a recycle program or a waste program. So all of the garbage in that community will be treated with magnetic technology, magnetic pulsing, magnetic current, vibration, everything, and completely eliminated and turned into neutral energy. So this is a zero footprint community, if you will. There will be absolutely no waste and no garbage generated from that community because it's all going to be treated. It will either be recycled, and if you want to like do the whole composting thing, that's fine. I have nothing against that. Even if it's not necessary, it's still a very valuable practice, and it's great for farming. And sometimes having too much technology isn't necessarily the best thing. I mean, you could make it all hydroponic, and it should be to some degree hydroponic because you have magnetic water that is going to bring incredible vitality. But some traditional methods of gardening and like say like composting are so valuable. Even and then you combine those traditional methods with magnetic technology, and you have the best of both worlds. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I'm not saying, oh my God, we have to become like Star Trek immediately. We just want to have it be sustainable, have no garbage produced from the community, have no pollution, even air pollution produced from the community as far as like the power generation goes. So the magnetic units do not produce any pollution whatsoever. Now, the one thing that there will be some pollution because there'll be EMS, especially if there's still a transition from electricity to magnetic technology. I mean, you could still have people might still be like on their cell phones or their computers for a while until all of that transitions to magnetic technology. But even then, hopefully that EMF pollution would be minimal at that point. And so as you kind of see where I'm going, you've got like your water grid, your power grid, the whole kind of community could be centered around certain areas like greenhouses, and then having a lot of water. Like we take for granted how important clean water is and how great it is for like even swimming and having like ponds and all that are crystal clear. And even if it's like landscape that has lots of streams like going through, like artificial streams, but that we make them, and we make them to mimic nature, but they have clean magnetic energy water running through them. So you get the idea, like there's a lot of power involved in water, especially water that we imprint with high vibration energy, with a lot of like love and gratitude and all these things, like Emoto's type of work, but taking that really to the nth degree. This water vibrates and sings in very incredible harmonies, and so you kind of want that flowing, your whole community kind of really just being saturated with that energy 24/7. And so you get the idea of like where this would take people at a consciousness level and what it would do to them emotionally, physically, to be in that type of energy in that community. And so that's really where we want this to go. And on the final note, and so I don't go too long on this, I'm going to do the next video on this, is every community would have a magnetic energy healing center. And I'll get into detail on what that will entail, but you're bringing this element of the medical world into the magnetic energy community, and it's another one of these factors where that community becomes self-sustaining. Okay, so it's like a microcosm that allows everyone in that community to feel safe, to feel taken care of, to have everything that they need to live healthy, beautiful, valuable lives. And don't even get me started to how the magnetic energy technology and the offshoots of all of that technology, how that will impact education and the educational system, if you will, in that community, and how it will just catapult it to the stars. And so with that, I will see you next time. And please, if you like this video, hit like, share the video, and always, I love the questions that everyone sends in, because you have brilliant questions. The people that watch these videos are really in tune, and I just have so much like love and respect for that. So please, if you have questions, send them in, and I look forward to another video soon, and take care.